Wareham. It is Monday, September 16th. We have a great show here for you, the news headlines, the weather report, and today in history. This morning, Mary Rose, the Onset's oldest resident, will be sharing some of her long-lived stories. Also this morning, we are going to take a look or visit of the Bartonwood Park Zoo in New Bedford. And Karen McHugh will be teaching us how you can get the most out of your grocery list. But first, I would like to take this moment to thank Not Your Average Antiques, an antique shop down Cranberry Highway in East Wareham, for donating the props that you see in the morning show. So stay tuned because the weather and the news headlines are next. There will be intervals of clouds and sunshine today, high at 72. Clear skies at night with low at 52. Tomorrow, enjoy the abundant sunshine with high at 67 and low at 50. And now to the news. There were plenty of news stories over the week coming up at the news headlines. Well, if you are into sweets, you would love this. Cupcake Charlie opened up this weekend. At their latest location in Wareham Crossing, the mass showed their support of the dessert chain. This is their 6th store. Cupcake Charlie's offers 16 freshly baked cupcakes, as well as, 16 baked cupcake flavors, as well as a diverse dessert menu. Everything is baked freshly to go in the house, and open kitchen concept allows customers to watch the baking and decorating process. And to another news, the Center for Corporate and Professional Education at Cape Cod Community College is offering cannabis business programs in Wareham, Plymouth, and Hyannis. The cannabis workshop will be held this week in locations in Plymouth and Hyannis, and will serve as both an introduction to industry as well as preview for a more comprehensive 2-day program planned for October 16th and 17th in Wareham. This workshop will discuss regulations in the Massachusetts marijuana industry and the importance of knowing such rules, the status of medical and recreational marijuana across America, job and licensing opportunities, including challenges faced by marijuana businesses. And to another news, the Wareham Land Trust and Wareham Board of Health are hosting a free informational talk on ticks and mosquitoes, the bugs that bug you, to be presented by Plymouth County entomologist Black Dennis, Wednesday, September 18th, and at 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the second floor auditorium in the Wareham Town Hall. Their presentation's goal is to bust any myth you may have and learn practical applications based on scientifically backed data. That's all for this morning's news. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with more. All right, for our first featured program of the day, we will be hearing some of the stories that Mary Rose has to offer. Mary Rose is the oldest resident in our town. She turned 105 this year, and she's still going strong. So here's a little bit about her adventurous life. At 349 Onset Avenue is the home of Onset's oldest resident, Mary Rose, who just turned 105 years old.
I remember my father's store.
It was this area, right?
Yes.
This was the store.
Yeah, and had a room in back. And he had a wonderful store, I tell you. He had bananas hanging from the rafters, and he had boxes of grapes.
Born in 1914, Mary Rose is the oldest of 7 children. She attended Oak Grove School right outside her house. So this particular school right here,
Yes.
who was allowed to go there?
Just the Cape Verdeans. They were segregated from the Hammond School. Hammond School was there, and
right
Mom
in the
was
center
going there. And they actually took them out of there and put them all over here, separated them.
Though she was born in the United States, her first language was Creole, the language of her parents, who were Cape Verdean immigrants. One of her childhood fond memories was the day she got a baby sister.
That day, we were all in that room there.
Now it's a kitchen, right?
Yes.
And we don't know what's going on upstairs. My father sent me to get the ladies, the
midwives.
Yeah, get the ladies.
They all went upstairs. Then my father comes down, he says, "You have a sister."
And at the same time, the train is back here, the tracks.
Yes.
And the train went by.
The train used to run back, way back. And, well, so I told my sister and brothers, "Did you hear that train?" Yep. Well, Alvina came in that train. My father told me that that's where we all came. Then I go to school and I told them.
You told them Alvina came from the train.
The boys are smart. They know everything, I guess. They told me, Alvina didn't come on any train. And they left it at that.
I left it at that. She also recalls tough moments in history, such as segregation, war, and the Great Depression.
1929, there was
The Depression. The crash
my father
in the government.
closed the store. That depression was bad. You see people walking in the road looking for money. Nobody had work. There was a factory in East Wareham, closed down. My godfather used to work on it.
What did they have in that factory? Was that
Cotton.
cotton? There was a
Cotton
cotton factory
from-
in Wareham. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, down south.
Her family, like many other Cape Verdean families at that era, worked in the cranberry bogs.
Everybody picked the cranberries, especially men. They bring the kids too. They brought us too to pick the berries, and we did a good job. I made $30. That was good. And that's how I got that coat with the fur.
She met her husband while picking cranberries. She also recalls the day his aunt came to her house to ask her parents for a hand in marriage.
I don't know what my father was going to say. I went to bed. I knew they were coming. I went to bed. I stayed there.
Yeah.
What was it like growing up with your mother?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, she was always a very quiet person, very religious, but she loves to teach. So she was very kind, and she taught me a lot, you know, and patience, and she cooked. She's a very hard worker. In the summers, my dad had made in the backyard, he made out of barrels and things like that, fire pits and stuff. So Mom would can. She would do all the canning. We lived down the Cape at the time, and the weathers are bad. So to prepare for winter, she would can all the vegetables, corn and beans and piccalilli and pickles, and then we had our home was like a zoo. We had chimpanzees, we had geese, we had calves, cows, and then that would get slaughtered for the winter. We had a huge freezer down in the cellar, and so they would package it all up, all the meats, and then like they would purchase rice by the 100-pound, Uncle Ben's rice by the 100-pound bags, and then they put tobacco inside so the bugs don't get the rice. It'll last all winter. Lima beans, you buy it in the big bags, and you put the tobacco, crush up the cigarettes and put them in there, you know.
Scrambled in a pool of long memories is a pivotal incident in her life. The day she eluded a terrible fate.
She was telling me when she was going to night school, and she was wondering, I'll just cut to the chase there for you. She was wondering why some of the ladies in the class, they would, all of a sudden she started seeing some of the women not coming back to school. So she was saying that one day she went to the school, and so she took a ride with this guy. So go ahead, you pick it up from there.
Yeah, well, that guy was Creole, you know, and he was teaching school too. He said, "Where do you ladies live?" They said, "Oh, nothing." He said, "Well, I live up that way. I can give you a ride." And then the next day, it took 2 days. Those two women, I didn't see those women.
Never came back to class.
They never come back. I don't know where they went.
So the next night, she took the ride again for him to take her home.
Mm-hmm.
So you got in the car, and he's driving off from school. So where do you go?
All of a sudden, I see there's snow on the ground, and there's woods.
And she doesn't recognize where she is.
I said, "You got to take me home." I said, you don't go home this way." He says, "I shortcut," and that you know. Then he stopped the car. He said, "I want you to promise me that you go out with me." I said, "I'm not going out with nobody." I went to go church to do.
Open the door.
He locked the door.
She started saying the Hail Mary.
Yeah. That time I was going to church all the time, you know. But I didn't realize that I was praying. Mm-hmm. You meet that? All of a sudden I happened to look up. I see a car coming with lights on top.
Blue flashing lights.
The cop come right by him. Got off. He said, "What are you doing here? What is this? You stopping in the snow? Are you all right, lady?" I said, "I'm all right." I said, "I'm not going to make it." He told him, "I want you to get the car going. I'm going to follow you, and so let her go home. You take her home." He said that. He started the car. He didn't go too far. He says, "You and your Hail Mary.
She never went back either.
I wanted
She
to
quit the
finish
school.
out my high school, you know, but I should have reported it. That's what I should have done.
When somebody asks you about your secret of making it to 104, almost 105, what do you say?
Well, I didn't do it on purpose.
I think that's amazing that God has allowed her to be able to enjoy the technology of today. And so it's fascinating. It's like when people are ill, you know, and you're going to pull the plug, and then next week they have a cure. You know? So it was like, wow, she can take advantage of this. So it's really, really something.
In a nutshell, Mary Rose attributes personal communication and family as a recipe for a long, happy life. Absolutely. Family ties and personal communications can get you very far. Anyhow, we're going to continue with our second featured program of the day, and that is a visit to the Buttonwood Park Zoo. Zoos have come a long way since 1874, when the first public zoological park in Philadelphia debuted in the country. During their nascent days, zoos were a place where animals lived in captivity and are put on display for people to view. The perception has long changed. Nowadays, zoos across the country are a safe haven for endangered species.
When you're choosing species to the zoo, it's no longer what is the most popular. It's really focused on what species need the most work. And when I say that, it means what species really need the work from a conservation standpoint. Species that are threatened, species that are endangered, that really need to be at zoos, a part of captive breeding programs to help these species from going extinct.
Buttonwood Park Zoo's Animal Hospital assures the well-being and population of these species. So in case you're wondering, why is it important to assure the survival of species apart from yours?
And you do get that question a lot. What do I care? Why would I need to change my habits? Well, everything's an ecosystem. Everything is connected. So you can say, oh, well, I don't need red panda. Well, that impacts so many things. Not only the other animals in its environment, the plants in its environment, seed dispersal. There's a lot of things. The entire plant here is interconnected. And when you start losing these major species in these ecosystems, it has far-reaching impact. We can see in our own backyard. Best example I can give you. We have all kinds of problems with Lyme disease on the South Coast. Well, that's because our deer populations is so high. Why is our deer population so high? The natural predators, the cougars, the wolves, they don't exist anymore. The only thing that's out there is the coyote. Well, the coyote doesn't eat the mice to spread the ticks to the deer. There's a whole ecosystem. So how does it affect me? Well, you worry about Lyme disease? Well, that's one of the reasons, is because species have gone extinct, even in our backyard.
Do we always draw such a straight line?
It's never a straight line. And one of the difficult things from a biological standpoint and from an evolutionary standpoint is oftentimes the impact are not immediately known. It doesn't happen overnight. There are some species that go extinct and it's immediately felt in the ecosystem. Many of them have long-term implications.
My first visit to Buttonwood Park Zoo in New Bedford cemented that thought. The Buttonwood Park Zoo is one of the oldest urban and suburban zoos in the country. It first opened its doors in 1894 and are currently celebrating 125 years of conservation commitment to more than 50 endangered and threatened species. Walking around the zoo, it is hard to believe its age, all thanks to the cosmetic surgery back in 1996.
Yeah, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the zoo closed for a complete remodel. There was, it was showing its age back then. So the entire zoo was done over, and that's about 20 years ago now. So yes, it was definitely a bright and shiny new zoo and an old footprint. And right now we're actually working on a master plan. It's been about 20 years since the zoo reopened, and we're working on updating everything at this point as well.
A component of the master plan was the expansion of Emily and Ruth Habitat, the two oldest residents in the zoo, in addition to opening Forest, Rivers, and Reef Reservation in 2017.
One great thing about the Rainforest Rivers and Reefs building is that we created mixed habitats, particularly on the Amazon side of the building. And what that basically means is that we don't have a singular species in one exhibit. We have a variety of different species living together, and that can be everything from small monkeys to tropical birds like parrots. We have lizard species, and we even have tons of fish species down below. Now, from an animal perspective, there's a lot of stimulation going on. There's all kinds of different animals. They need to learn how to cohabitate with all these different animals, and it creates not only a rewarding environment for the animals, it also creates a rewarding experience for the visitors that are coming to the zoo.
So part of our master plan is to redesign our barn area into the Nature Connection Education Center. So the barn itself is being retrofitted into 4 new classroom spaces, as well as a brand new animal ambassador facility where we'll be able to have our animal ambassadors get up close and personal with our visitors on a more regular basis than they are now.
Working with Nature Explorer, Charlie's Nature Play and Outdoor Nature Playground opened last July. The zoo also runs classes and public programs to help people best understand nature and the world around them.
So this is called Science on a Sphere. This is a tool that was developed by NOAA to be a way to visualize kind of global data. So what we're looking at right now is an actual satellite image taken from space of Earth. And what we're able to do with this is really do lessons. We do a ton of school programming and some public programming on things like weather, space, and really anything in between. So we have, let's see, right now we're looking at over 660 different data sets that we can put up on the sphere. Everything from the age of the seafloor, which is what is up there now, to, let's pick some other fun things that we can see. Bird migration patterns. So truly we can do a lot of really neat things with the sphere. So right here you can see they've put 2 data sets on top of each other. One is air temperature and the other one is bird populations. So you can see how bird populations may or may not move with the change in temperatures and seasons.
Now, for those who would say to you, wild animals do not belong in the zoo, what do you say?
I agree. I get this question all the time. Why? I need to qualify that, don't I? I get this question all the time. I'm a zoo director. I've been working in zoos for about 30 years now, and I wish there wasn't a need for zoos. I really wish that we could all just enjoy animals out in the wild, but that's not reality. Reality is species are becoming threatened, endangered, and going extinct at record levels. There are species that are at the Buttonwood Park Zoo and other zoos around the country that barely exist in the wild or are extinct in the wild. And the only chance for these species ever to survive, or to ever be reintroduced back into the wild, is the captive breeding programs of accredited zoos. So in a perfect world, you wouldn't need to have zoos. We have such lush wildlife interacting with humans. That's not the world we live in. The world we live in is that wildlife's under constant threat, and zoos are at the forefront of saving these species, from captive breeding programs for reintroduction and also for conservation in the field as well.
So whether you're in for the exotic experience and look at the beautiful pandas to the majestic elephants, or you're interested in seeing the faces of your occasional neighbors, Buttonwood Park Zoo may just be the answer. I do hope you go to New Bedford and you get to visit the Buttonwood Park Zoo. It's a nice boutique little zoo. Anyhow, now we're going to take a look at a noble cause, Angel Babies, and a profit organization that is there to make sure that every moment with your family counts, even if it's a tragedy, even if it is a
I'd like to make none, but unfortunately the need is great. Pregnancy loss, miscarriage, stillbirth is a very taboo subject, so anything we can do to help raise awareness, and so that way families know that they're not alone, they don't have to grieve alone, they don't have to walk this path by themselves, and that there's many of us out there. Unfortunately, to be able to purchase a gun like this, there's such a small market, it's almost unavailable. So when families are in those moments that they get the news that their baby's gone, it's not available, and you just can't walk into a store and get something for a tiny baby who is only 1 pound, you know, and it's to help take a little bit off their plates.
If I make it to the heart of you, I will not go back. I know we can make it through, turn it blue from black. If I make it to the heart of you.
One dress helps a family, and that's all we can ask for, is to be able to help that one family in their darkest days. Because it's their first and last moments with their families. It is the only time the families are going to get with their babies. They're not getting first days, they're not getting wedding days, they're not getting those monumental events. This is all they get, and each baby deserves to be dressed as any baby would, you know, and to have those beautiful moments, because it's all the family are going to have.
If I make it to the heart of you, I can make it.
I will take any volunteer, anyone of any skill level. We can find a chore. You can come and cut and trace. You can sew if you can. You know, you can help organize dresses, iron. There's always something for any skill level if anyone is willing to donate their time.
It could be beautiful. Let go of your old disguise. If I make it to the heart of you, I will make you see that the heart of you belongs at the heart of me. That the heart of you belongs at the heart of me. At the heart of me.
All right, now we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our program. Welcome back, and thank you for being with us this morning. We are broadcasting live from our WCTV studio. This is Good Morning Wareham, your source for local news, weather, traffic, and more information. And now for a moment in history, let's take a look at where we were today in history. All right, on this day in protest to history, Gandhi starts a hunger strike in 1932. Gandhi went on strike while in the Yawada jail in India, and he was protesting the British government's decision to separate India's electoral system by socioeconomic class. In this system, the poor had their own political representation that Gandhi believed would cause a class divide that would be irreparable. His fast lasted 6 days and ended up successful with the British reversing their decision. Also today in the Pilgrim history, the Mayflower left in England in 1620, leaving Plymouth, England. They 102 people on board looked to start a new life in the New World by meeting up with other colonists in Virginia. However, due to a storm, they ended up landing in what is now Provincetown on November 21st, making their voyage over 2 months long. They would settle in their new colony of Plymouth during the dangerous winter months when half of the initial colonists ended up dying. Things improved in 1621 when colonists started making treaties and economic agreements with the native tribes. By 1640, Plymouth had over 3,000 people living in it. Also today in war history, the United States starts selective service in 1940. A peacetime draft required men from ages 21 to 36 to sign up, and if their number was chosen, they would have to participate in the military. When the United States entered World War II, the draft expanded its age range to be 18 to 37 years old and began including black people in the draft as well. By the end of World War II, 10 million men had served in the American military. Also for today's birthday, shout out goes to B.B. King, an American music legend born in Mississippi in 1925. King and his trusty guitar provided us with decades of memorable and iconic music. And that's all for today's history segment. To learn more cool historical facts, please go online under history.com. The coffee segment is next, but first let's take a little break. Okay, so for our coffee segment, we will be re-airing my interview from last week with Karen McHugh, who was discussing the best way to get the most nutritious out of your grocery list. So take a look. All right, welcome back. This now is the coffee segment. With me is Karen McHugh.
McHugh.
Yes.
It's okay.
Karen McHugh.
Everybody messes it up.
I had another pronunciation this
That's
morning.
okay.
Bob was like, "Is that another guess?" I said, "No, still Karen."
Well, when I taught at Old Rochester, I had kids who called me Mrs. McHug, which was cute.
McHugh. Okay,
Yeah,
I think
but
I had something
it's
similar
McHugh.
today. So she is here. She's back, and we will see some foods on our table here, and we're going to be talking about these foods. No, we're not going to be making a sandwich today or marshmallows, anything of that nature. But we're going to be talking about food labels, so you could, you could help you to understand what you're buying and why you're buying. We all know sometimes we shop because we feel a certain way. I have done it. You have done it before. You do not care. Looking for something that can make you feel good quickly.
Yep.
But for those other days that you actually are all there in your head, this will be a best way. And yes, Karen isn't a professional nutritionist,
Correct.
but she has done her homework. She knows what she's talking about. And these are some of the things that work for her. So all you could do is just pay attention, and maybe we can inspire you a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. So let's start. What should we start with?
How about labeling?
Labeling, okay.
And by the way, this white bread does not work for me, but we'll get into that, okay? All right, labeling. Well, when you look at a label, there are a few things that people tend to not necessarily know about. Number one, when you pick, you've got this nice box of fun crackers for appetizers. You want to look not just at the nutritional facts, but the actual genuine serving size.
Okay.
When you pick up a container, even if it's small, it doesn't necessarily mean that's one serving. There could be several, which is deceptive. Because when you look to where the calories might be located on this, but I think I should put my glasses on so I can see. That would be really good. Yeah, in this case, calories are listed right here, but that's per serving, not for the whole box. So don't fool yourself. This is a big problem people have with maintaining a healthy diet and not eating too many calories, is they'll pick up a container and decide for themselves how many calories are in it. So that's one thing to look for, a serving size and what the real calories are per that size. Okay. In this case, they're saying serving size is 4 crackers. That's not much. Okay. But it's 60 calories. That's not much either. Okay. Depends on what you put on it is the next step. Another thing which I want to mention to people right away is pay attention to outside labeling. I don't see it here. I don't know that I have anything that says this, but the words natural, all natural. There are a lot of words that are used for advertising on food packages that have no legitimate value. They're not defined necessarily. They have no legal value. The advertisers just put these words on because they feel like it, and people are fooled.
Non-GMO.
Non-GMO is probably true, which means, what is GMO these days? That's the latest thing where they make foods with, I think it's a spray or something, some sort of a pesticide, I'm not quite sure. So that's probably okay. But the use of all natural means nothing. So you want to look at what the actual ingredients are. You want to see how much fat or sugar is in something.
And when you're talking about those labels that actually mean nothing, some people would buy something. I mean, if you have a gluten allergy, it's great that you're buying something that says gluten-free.
Yep.
But there was this trend, I remember, while I was in college, we all eating gluten-free things wasn't because of the allergy, but we equated it as being healthy, or we wouldn't have as many carbs, or carbs would be easily broken down.
Yep.
It's all bogus.
Most of it is. You have to do your homework. You've got to get online. You've got to talk to your nutritionist. You've got to talk to somebody who has the expertise in the particular food that you're talking about. You go to someone and say, or look it up, what exactly is non-GMO? What does gluten-free really mean? Does it matter to me if I don't have to worry about gluten, if I don't have any issues with, I think it's celiac disease or something? So it's important to do your homework on the food. A lot of people don't bother. we're all inherently lazy. We go shopping, we're hungry, we grab some food, and we decide in our little heads what the value of the food may be to us, and it's not necessarily true. Here's an example of where people will come into the supermarket and, like, we grew up with white bread.
Yes.
Let's face it, we all did. And we liked our white bread. They even have advertisements where you could tear it in half and that somehow had value. You're probably too young to remember that. I remember it. But to get a basic loaf of white bread is it's valueless, basically. It's just filling your stomach temporarily. And why? Because the white bread is a bleached flour, and there are a lot of additives put into it. It's not a healthy flour. To get a healthy flour, and again, it's back to packaging, is look to see what the label says. In this case is one that I always buy, well, often buy. Sometimes I buy whole wheat breads with a lot of seeds in them. But this makes better peanut butter and jelly, especially when I've got visiting grandsons at times. This actually doesn't say 100% whole wheat on the top, but I know if I read on the back, it does. When you're buying breads, rather than getting white bread, you switch to 100% whole wheat. Here's another packaging gimmick. Sometimes they'll say wheat bread. That may mean they sprinkle a few more little bits of unprocessed wheat in there or less processed. It may mean they put brown food coloring it to make it look brown. So that's why you want it to say whole wheat, and when you can get one stone ground, and I know from this package it is 100% whole wheat. If it says 100% whole wheat, then you're golden. When you make your PB&J with this or your morning toast, you're getting some nutritional value out of this with the fiber alone that you will never get from that.
So right there is fiber that is allure, but
Yep.
When you look at the carbs, what is the carbs in that one?
Carbs is another story. There are carbohydrates, there is fiber, there's a lot of things. I'm not sure, what does it say?
This
I
one
didn't
says
buy that.
15 grams per slice.
Okay, this one says 7 grams per slice.
Oh, okay, that's a big
But
variation.
it's a big variation, but what's the fiber like in this? I wouldn't trust it in a heartbeat.
Oh, okay.
Because
the fiber, it says dietary fiber is 0.
Right. Dietary fiber 0. This one has 7%, it has 2 grams.
Okay.
What you want to look at is the ingredients too. In this case, the ingredients on the back, right here, like with everything says, whole wheat flour. That's the #1 ingredient. That's the second big thing I want to mention when you're buying foods is look at the ingredients, and the largest amount of a certain ingredient in the product is the first thing listed. So this starts right off with whole wheat flour. So you know that you're getting something that's not processed, it's not bleached, probably fewer preservatives in it. There's a lot of work that goes into ruining flour to turn it into white bread. That does not go into a whole grain bread. So the reading the ingredients will tell you, and then, again, with the help of your nutritionist, learn how to read the labels on fiber and protein. Protein is great, and the reason protein is great, and I brought an example that I have from home that I use a lot. I hope it's okay. I'll just do this. It's a cereal I buy a lot because it's very high in protein. And what I like about that is protein fills you up. So when you get a lot of good protein, it's filling your belly up, and you don't get hungry again as fast. So there are advantages to that.
Very good. All right, and then you have some healthier things. You brought us tuna. Speaking of protein.
I brought in tuna. I'm not a fan of tuna.
Okay.
As I mentioned on my show that we filmed yesterday, I'm not a fan of celery. A few things I'm not, and you can't really read this label. But buying solid tuna in water has fewer calories than tuna in fat. But I believe the oil that is in tuna isn't unhealthy for you. Just fat always has more calories than water, obviously. Yes. So, but this is something we keep in our house for the other people in my household who do like tuna. I don't care for it, but it's a very healthy
Well, when
food.
it comes to making tuna itself, that package there, it's really not harmful at all.
No.
Even when you eat that out of straight from the can, that's the best way.
Yep.
But then we make a sandwich out of this. And apart from the bread, you talked about the bread, but we have mayonnaise.
Yep.
I have tried, we have Miracle Whip, those other, and they don't taste as good.
That's right, and
So
they never will.
Yeah, and you take something healthy like that, a good example of turning it to something completely wrong at the end of the day.
Mayonnaise, I just use it sparingly, as they say, judiciously. Just use a little bit. Use just enough to make it wet. I personally like mayonnaise a little bit. I'm not going to get rid of it, but just don't use 5,000 tablespoons of it with a little bit of tuna. Who's kidding who? It's a matter of being honest about what you're eating. So you make your tuna, you add your chopped vegetables. That'll also fill up the food, the end tuna dish that you're making, and add a little bit of mayonnaise. I like actually the low-fat mayonnaise.
Okay.
My husband doesn't, but too bad. That's what I use.
Who goes
And it
shopping?
tastes perfectly good to me
Yes.
using low-fat mayonnaise. So there's a way around it. Just don't use a lot of it.
Well, they have come up with all types of variations of mayonnaise nowadays. You have the olive oil. Now,
Yes.
just olive oil. Speaking of oils,
Yep.
we know vegetable oil because of the word vegetable. I think it's good oil. What about the with olives and all that?
Okay, well, it depends. Olive oil is very good for you. It's an example of an unsaturated fat. If a fat is in liquid form all the time, that's much better for you than something that comes in solid form, like a butter or a lard, a shortening. That's just nasty stuff for your heart. And again, you talk to your physician or your nurse about your heart, but they'll always recommend liquid forms of fat. Olive oil is an excellent example. It's part of very healthy diets. What you don't want to do with olive oil in the sesame oils is use them in the wrong food preparation, because olive oil and, for example, sesame oil have a very strong taste. So they're great. Olive oil is great for making salad dressings. Sesame oil is great for sauteing up vegetables and fish and meat for an Asian-based dish. But you don't want to put olive oil, let's see, in something that traditionally calls for vegetable oil, which I think is usually corn oil. I can't think of anything off the top. Oh, brownies. Oh, I learned my lesson once. As a kid, I got into this real health thing when I was in college and decided to make brownies with organic, natural cocoa, and I used peanut oil instead of vegetable oil. Those things were nasty. They went right in the trash. So mostly baked goods. They're calling for vegetable oil for a reason, because it's going to work with the rest of the food. Olive oil would not. But if you're going to have an oil, keep it what's called non-saturated as opposed to saturated. If it's in liquid form, you don't want to eat tons of it, because it's still fat. It still has a lot of calories. Another way of getting fat is in some vegetables. My favorite, or actually, is it a fruit? Avocado, which I think is technically a fruit because it has seeds, is an excellent source of natural fat. Again, there's calories in it, so you don't want to eat 18 avocados at a sitting. But it's a phenomenal way of getting fat in your diet without slathering butter all over your bread and things like that.
Oh, that's good. Actually, I will be having an avocado in my lunch.
Well, our show that we filmed yesterday, we made meat chili, and I strongly recommend, I did at the end of the show, chop up some little chunks of avocado and put that in the top. It's yummy.
Very good. So what are some of the things that mean nothing when you're shopping that they just can pop up in your face, so you should notice quickly?
That's a good one.
Well, you have this. Would
Yeah.
they be located in that?
Oh,
actually, speaking of that, this is funny.
okay, let's talk about your ketchup.
Is this a vegetable? Could this be labeled as a vegetable?
All right, well, let's look at the label here and see what's actually ketchup. Comes from tomatoes. I've never tried to make ketchup. Well, okay, the first ingredient is tomato concentrate from tomatoes, but it's not telling you how much real tomato is in this. What's in the concentrate? Can you get anything out of this? Well, you're going to look and see what you've got for your vitamins. Woohoo, a tablespoon is going to give you 2% of your vitamin A, 2% of your vitamin C. It won't kill you, but at the same time, 1 tablespoon is 20 calories, so if you've got a big burger and you put 3 or 4 tablespoons of ketchup on that or on your fries, it starts to add up. Sodium isn't bad. This is only 7% for the 1 tablespoon, but you're not going to make a meal out of this. My concern for this labeling is first ingredient is tomato concentrate from red ripe tomatoes. It's not telling you how much tomato is actually in this and what's in the concentrate. I believe they put a fair amount of sugar in these.
Oh, I see.
There's no fiber. It says 4 grams of sugar.
Can you make your own ketchup?
I don't know. I've never tried to. I bet you could. Go online, type it up, see what you get. Why not? Give it a try. I would imagine if you had a good food processor.
Yes.
Don't know. Never tried.
Interesting, because I love ketchup.
Yeah, it's not my favorite, but
Yeah.
most people it is for the right American foods. Yeah, ketchup is very big in our diet. And I noticed you brought a thing of peanut butter, fats. When I mentioned solid versus saturated versus non-saturated, this is saturated. Look at this. Tip it upside down, nothing comes out because all of your fat in here is solid. This also has quite a bit well, sometimes they take the sugar out, and notice that they're advertising 1 whole gram of protein. Big deal. I didn't bring a natural. If you buy a natural peanut butter sold in the exact same aisle, right next to the Jif, and I think Jif actually now makes a natural peanut butter, that's where the word natural has some meaning, because it's a unsaturated oil, so when you open it up, you go, oh, you're kidding me, right? You have to take a knife and stir it.
Yeah, you have to really have
That's
some time in
real
your schedule
peanut butter.
you gotta work it.
Well, no, you don't necessarily. You buy the bottle of it. You ready for this? Do that. Tip it upside down on the counter, and the oils will drain. And then when you go after a day or so and flip it back, it's a real quick stir. And then if you leave it in the fridge, it won't separate out as quickly. So that's all you have to do. You can make your own peanut butter. Throw a bunch of peanuts in a blender. There you go. You've got peanut butter.
You got peanut butter.
And you've got it with unsaturated fat, which is much healthier, and a real peanut butter also has, I'm sure, a lot more protein than these packaged
Whole
ones with
Foods
saturated.
has the machines. You just grind whatever.
there you
make your
go.
own butter. It tastes. I do it with the almonds.
Yep. Oh, yeah, almond butter.
Yeah, almond butter or the honey nuts, and then you grind them, and you get this delicious.
Yep, sure you do.
Honey peanut butter.
Yep. Well, the honey's you've got some refined sugar in that, so be a little bit careful. Honey, depending on where that honey is coming from, that's a tricky word too. Natural honey has a type of sugar that is better for you than other types of highly refined sugars, but I have to see how they're using the word honey. But to buy a natural honey is better for you than using the word honey in something else that they may just sprinkle some sort of a heavily processed sort of product and call it honey.
So it seems like you really have to do your homework when you gotta know what is in there, because to take them at face value, they said it's healthy, whatever. It may not mean anything.
Exactly. There's a lot of gimmicks out there to get people to buy things, and because it's in our faces all the time in the media that we should be more concerned, which is absolutely true. It doesn't mean that you can go to the supermarket, there's that magic word healthy or better for you. It doesn't mean anything. Read your labels, and don't be, I think a big mistake some people might make is, I got to take everything out, I got to take that, and I got to get rid of it, and I got to take the peanut butter and toss that and the whole thing. One thing at a time. Get rid of that nasty bread, spend a little bit more money, and buy a 100% whole wheat bread. That's the only change you make for now. Then you get used to this bread, you find you can't even go back. Give yourself a few days or a few weeks with peanut butter and jelly. Then you switch out of your peanut butters with all the saturated fat, and you switch to the natural peanut butters. Again, a little bit more money, but they go a long way. The flavor is more intense, so you use less of it. And little by little, one product at a time, and you'll find yourself craving the good stuff, quote unquote, after a while. And you find that you can't go back to the white breads or to the heavily sugared or fatty products. Then you go to the restaurant. You love your French fries with your ketchup. Switch it up, spend maybe $1 more, and instead of getting regular fries, get sweet potato fries. They are very sweet. There's quite a bit of natural sugar in that. There's a lot of calories, but they're a little bit better for you because you're getting the nutrients in the sweet potato, which are a little bit better than what you're getting in plain potato. You're getting more vitamins in a sweet potato. So there's little bitsy things that you can do in a restaurant or at home and switch things out little by little and get yourself used to eating better foods. Don't do it all at once.
Thank you so much for being in the studio to
welcome.
tell us about this. I learned a lot, and I hope my viewers did too.
Good.
Our guest was Karen McHugh here in the studio talking about healthy eating and effective ways of reading labels, food labels. If you missed us this morning, this particular episode will re-air this evening at 6 p.m. We'll be back on Friday with more. Thank you, Wareham, and have a pleasant day. Thank you. Bye. So that continued, but it did say see you on Friday. It's not Friday, see you on Monday. That was the Wednesday's presentation. Anyhow, just a reminder that the Wareham Land Trust and Wareham Board of Health will be hosting an event on Wednesday, September 18th at 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the second floor auditorium in Wareham Town Hall. They will be discussing about bugs and debunking some myths. So that is something to look forward to. With that, thank you so much, Wareham, for joining us this morning. We'll be back on Wednesday. Selectman Alan Slavin will be here to talk about the casino proposal, to digest some of that information. If you missed us this morning, this particular show will re-air this evening at 6 p.m. Thank you, Wareham. Have a lovely day. Bye.